Hope you guys are having a great week. We are going to be talking about evaluation methods today. An overview of what we're going to talk about: theory of change, logic models, performance measurement, data collection, evaluation plans, and how to construct a grant timeline. A program's theory of change is the general underlying idea of how you believe your intervention will create change and why the desired change is expected and how the desired change is expected to come about. Your theory of change articulates the assumptions underlining your choice of activities. There are three elements to the theory of change. It begins by identifying the problem or the need to be addressed. The second element identifies a specific intervention or set of activities that you have chosen to address the problem or need. And the last element refers to the intended outcome or the change you expect to bring about if you deliver the intervention according to plan. Your theory of change, the expected cause and effect relationship between a specific intervention and its anticipated outcomes, should be based on evidence of how and why the expected change will occur. So you can see here I've identified a problem and need, an intervention, and an intended outcome. So for our problem or need, we determined that falls are the leading cause of injury in older adults age 65 and older. Our intervention that we want to do is to have safety repairs specifically related to fall prevention, and our intended outcome is to decrease the number of hospitalizations due to falls in older adults. Now that you have a general understanding of what a program's theory of change is, let's talk about what a program logic model is and how it relates to a program's theory of change. A logic model is a more detailed visual representation of a program's theory of change. Logic models communicate how a program works by depicting the intended relationships among the resources available to operate the program, the activities the program carries out, and the changes or results the program hopes to achieve, which are referred to as outputs and outcomes. Creating a logic model enables you to set out the program's story, detailing what you're trying to achieve and why is it important, how will you measure effectiveness, and how are you actually doing. There are several different types of logic models. However, I think this one is the most beneficial for grant writing. This model specifies four elements: the inputs, the activities, outputs, and outcomes. The inputs are the resources used by the program. The activities are the processes undertaken to implement the change. The outputs are direct products from the activities. And the outcomes are the benefits derived from the program, usually expressed in short, medium, and long-term goals, which may be direct or indirect. Outcomes indicate a change from pre to post-program, typically more associated with behaviors, skills, attitude, and knowledge. So we're going to talk about each of those elements individually. So first, starting with the far left side of your logic model, we have the program's inputs, also called resources. Inputs or resources are considered essential for a program's activities to occur. They may include a combination of human, financial, organizational, and community-based resources that are available to a program and are used to carry out the program's activities. So for example, if we think about our example before about fall prevention, some things might include funding, program staff, volunteers, and fall prevention research. From inputs, we move to the activities component of your logic model. Activities are the specific actions that make up your program or intervention. They reflect processes, tools, events, and other actions that are used to bring about your program's desired change or results. Let's think again back to our hypothetical fall prevention program. Specific resources that they might use to carry out the following activities would be workshops on fall prevention, educational classes or home repair counseling maybe. And they might also have referrals to home repair or ADA accessible programs. Some more examples, again, workshops, educational classes, and sometimes summits are also activities that one can use. We move from activities to outputs. Outputs are what a program's specific activities will create or produce, providing evidence of service delivery. Outputs are often described numerically or quantified in some way. For example, outputs associated with our fall prevention program might include a specific number of individuals who attend a fall prevention program or workshop, specific number of individuals who receive home repair counseling or services, a specific number of individuals who received a referral to a home repair or fall prevention source. So think about the number of people or the number of things that you're trying to achieve when thinking of outputs. Outcomes are the specific change that may result in the program's activities or interventions. A program's outcomes follow along a continuum ranging from short to long-term results. Short-term outcomes are often considered changes in beneficiaries' knowledge, skills, or attitude. Medium-term outcomes refer to changes in behavior or action that result in the beneficiary's new knowledge, skills, or attitudes. Long-term outcomes are often characterized as changes in the condition or status in life that result from the beneficiary's new behaviors or actions. It is important to note that describing the outcome as short, medium, and long depends on the objective, the length of the program, and the expectations of the program or intervention. Back to our fall prevention program, examples of outcomes. So an example of a short-term outcome would be that individuals are expected to increase their knowledge of fall prevention methods. This change in knowledge is expected to lead them to actually adopting fall prevention practices or having completed home repair interventions. This behavioral or situational change represents the median term outcome. This, in turn, is expected to lead to an increase in safety in the home and a decrease in the amount of falls, a long-term outcome of the program. An important step in finalizing your logic model is to verify or assess whether the model you have created reflects an appropriate level of detail, is plausible, is realistic, and that there is a consensus among key stakeholders that the model accurately represents your program. You can ask yourself the following questions, and if you can say yes, then you have a verified logic model. Now that you've had an opportunity to draft a logic model of your program, I want to transition into talking about how your logic model can be used to help with both performance measurements and program evaluation activities. However, before we do so, I want to first provide you with a brief overview of performance measurement and program evaluation, and in particular, how these activities differ from one another. While both performance measurement and program evaluation are considered measurement activities, the two activities serve different purposes. Some of you may already know what performance measurement is because it's an activity that you may already be doing in your program. Performance measurement is the ongoing monitoring and reporting of a program's accomplishment and its progress towards the pre-established goals. For many programs, this includes collecting data on specific activities carried out and the direct products and services produced by your program's activities or their outputs. Performance measurement data helps you understand what level of performance is achieved by the program or intervention. Program evaluation, on the other hand, is an in-depth research activity that answers specific questions or tests hypotheses about a program's process or program's outcomes. The result enables you to arrive at a judgment of whether the intervention or specific component of the intervention works or does not work as expected, and also what adjustments may be needed to improve the program. The key difference between performance measurement and program evaluation is that program evaluation helps you understand and explain why you are seeing the program results. It is important to keep in mind that the performance measurement and program evaluation are not mutually exclusive. Grantees already engaged in performance measurement activities can build on that as they plan for program evaluation. For example, let's say your program is already collecting data to monitor and report on your program's progress towards achieving its expected outcomes for the program's beneficiaries. If your program decides to conduct an impact evaluation to learn whether your progress on outcomes is caused by your intervention, it may be that you continue to collect the same outcome data, but also include a matched comparison group. Including this comparison group enables you to answer specific questions related to causality. In this case, what would have happened to the people if they did not receive the intervention? At this point, I want to turn our attention to how logic models can inform program evaluations. Your logic model can be used as a tool to help you plan for your evaluation. It can serve as a framework for your evaluation plan by helping you make informative decisions about what to evaluate, when to evaluate, and how you will evaluate. It is important to note that with program evaluation, it is not necessary to evaluate every aspect of your program as depicted in your logic model. Your evaluation can have a narrow focus, only address questions about one of your program service activities, or it can have a broader focus, address questions about each of your program's service activities, depending on the information you hope to gain from your evaluation. Your logic model can be used as a tool to help you focus your evaluation with respect to the following: identifying questions you want or need to answer about your program, identify which aspects of your program to evaluate, determine the appropriate evaluation design, identify what information to collect, identify measures and data collection methods, and determine an appropriate timeline for your evaluation. Let's start with an example of how a logic model can be used to help you draft or narrow in the questions that you want your evaluation to answer. The graphic above provides an example of the types of questions that may be asked of each component in a logic model. Questions related to inputs ask, are resources adequate to implement the program? Questions related to activities ask, are activities delivered as intended? Questions related to output ask, how many and how much were produced? And questions related to outcomes ask, what changes occurred as a result of the program? As you can see at the bottom of this graphic, in order to answer each of these questions, indicators and their data sources will need to be identified. When developing research questions based on your program's logic model, ensure that questions are stated in a way that is clear and measurable in order for them to be answerable. As you narrow in on the questions you want answered about your program, it is at this time you will need to determine what type of evaluation to conduct and what elements of your logic model should be incorporated in your evaluation. As you can see here, logic models have two sides, a process side and an outcome side. Questions related to the process side of the model are generally different than the questions related to the outcome side of the model, and therefore require different evaluation approaches to address them. Let's think back to our fall prevention program as an example. Program staff may be interested in answering the question, was the fall prevention program implemented as planned, and if not, how and why was it altered for implementation? These questions concern the key components on the left side of the logic model, or the process side. So the type of evaluation needed to answer these questions would be a process evaluation. This means the data collected will focus on understanding the relationship between the resources or inputs that were employed and what activities were accomplished with these resources. Process evaluations tend to be more useful in the beginning stages of the program's implementation to help determine whether a target population was being reached, people are receiving the intended services, and if staff are adequately qualified. Alternately, program staff may be interested in understanding whether their program is effective or not? This type of question calls for an impact evaluation design where the focus is on understanding whether the program was able to produce the desired outcomes specified on the right side of the logic model. Again, let's use our fall prevention program as an example. If program staff are interested in finding out what difference the fall prevention program has had on an individual's knowledge of or attitude about how to prevent falls, an impact evaluation design includes a comparison or control group that would need to be employed to determine what would have happened to people if they did not receive the intervention. In general, an impact evaluation assesses the extent to which the program achieves its desired outcomes and whether those outcomes can be attributed to the program. This type of evaluation typically occurs after a program has reached a steady state of implementation. It is important to note that programs conducting an impact evaluation do not need to evaluate all programs or outcomes at one time, or even over a period of time. In deciding which outcomes to include in an evaluation, it is important to consider what questions your evaluation seeks to answer and the time frame of the evaluation and outcome measures. A program's influence is most directly related to its proximal outcomes, such as short and medium outcomes. The more time that elapses between your intervention and the outcome that is measured by your evaluation, the more external variables come into play that are beyond the program's control. When determining what type of evaluation to do, you should also look at what type of data collection methods you will use. There are two types of data collection that are used in an evaluation: quantitative and qualitative. Quantitative methods are methods that quantify or measure or count data. Questions to focus on when using quantitative methods are understanding the quantities or frequencies of a particular aspects of a program, determining whether a cause and effect relationship is present, comparing two methods seeking to achieve the same outcomes, and establishing a numerical baseline. Qualitative methods, in contrast, are based on direct contact with the people involved in the program. These methods consist of interviews, observations, and personal stories, both told in writing, in photo or video, as well as reviewed selected documents. It implies an emphasis on processes and meanings that are examined, but not measured in terms of quantity, amount, or frequency. To employ qualitative methods, you need to focus on understanding feelings or opinions about the program among participants, staff, or community members, gain insight on how patterns of relationship in the program unfold, gather multiple perspectives to understand the whole picture, and identify approximate indicators that the clients are moving in the right direction. Here we have a table that lists some outcomes identified in our fall prevention program logic model. I provided an example measure for the selected short, medium, and long-term outcomes, and you can see here how those work together. Below each measure is a potential data source. These data sources may be existing or new. The data sources that refer to a matched comparison group of non-beneficiaries pertain to the impact evaluations and would not be necessary for programs conducting a process evaluation. So our outcomes, you can see for short-term, individuals are expected to increase their knowledge of fall prevention methods. We're going to measure that by seeing if they have an increased understanding of fall prevention practices, and our data source we'll use are pre and post surveys from the program participants. Our medium-term outcomes are that they adopt a fall prevention practice. So we're going to increase the number of, and we want to see an increase in the number of individuals enrolled in fall prevention programs, and the data source for that would be the use of administrative data records. And for long-term outcomes, we're hoping that they have safer housing. And in order to measure that, we want to see a decrease in the number of falls resulting in hospitalization. So our data source for that outcome would be pre and post health records of program participants. So how can you use a logic model in order to create your evaluation plan? Well, thinking through your evaluation plan in terms of the logic model components will help you develop a framework for your evaluation plan. Typically, funders have formatting guidelines that determine the length of each narrative section in a grant proposal. The program design is usually the largest section, so write succinctly but include sufficient details for your funder to see that you have a comprehensive evaluation plan. Your evaluation plan must always be written to address the funding agency's guidelines. A comprehensive evaluation plan includes a narrative on how the program will be evaluated, whether quantitatively, qualitatively, or both. And it also tells the funder what type of data will be collected, who will be collecting, analyzing, and interpreting that data, and the frequency of the data collection process. Don't forget to add a detail about each target population included in the evaluation process and tell how the information or data will be collected from them. All of this information should have already been outlined in your logic model, so now you just have to put it in a narrative format. So here's a great example of an evaluation plan narrative. You can see that they have identified who is going to be completing the evaluation. This information I've bolded, what their data sources are, that information is underlined, and how frequent the data is collected. This is italicized. They're also connecting the evaluation back to what their main purpose of the project is, and that portion is outlined in green. This is really important to do to kind of tie everything together, so make sure you put it back to the organization's original mission. After crafting your program evaluation narrative, it's important to create a timeline. Though not always required, it is important to create a grant timeline because it'll assist you in fully understanding the step-by-step processes that'll take place through the life of your project. Delineating everything that will happen, who will be responsible for it, and why is it important to the overall success of your project will enable you to see any omissions, gaps, duplications of effort, or unrealistic expectations at a time when those can be effectively addressed. And that will help you write a better project narrative. A timeline can be simply stated in a narrative form, and if partners are involved in the project, include their efforts along the continuum. I also like to see timelines as sort of a graphic representation as an attachment to your grant. So a timeline should determine the amount of time under a grant, whether that be 12 months, 36 months, 5 years, etc. Divide that time into quarters. If your grant is 12 months or less, then you need to divide that by monthly intervals, and then create a list of everything that will take place during the full grant period. So in the first 1 to 3 months, you should probably use that time for items such as award acceptance, meetings with partners to reestablish activities and responsibilities, any passage of legislation that will be necessary to accept the grant's funds, updating grant documentation, whatever that first kind of initial award phase might look like, you need to put that in month 1 to 3. After that, make sure you build in time to receive any equipment that will be purchased with the grant funds. You can't state that you use the equipment for your project if you haven't received it yet, so make sure to purchase it early on in your timeline. You should also include any major or minor events and any procurement that will need to be done. You should list any meetings that need to be held and show when they'll be scheduled and maybe who will attend, and include all reporting requirements for the funder. This will prove that you have an understanding of the obligations that you're under and have a plan in place to meet them. You should also include any time to address your project or address any issues that may arise that are unexpected, just to make sure. This will help show that you're keeping an eye on the progress of your project and can address any issues within the time frame of your grant. Here we have an example timeline for a grant program. You can see that they have identified several key activities and milestones in the left-hand column. I'm sorry, that is a little blurry. But they have also divided their grant up into quarters, checking what activities were going to be completed in each quarter in the middle portion, and in the right-hand column, they have listed key personnel or groups who are responsible to complete that activity. That's also important so you know and your team knows who is responsible for each activity that needs to be addressed during the grant program. So that's it for this week. Here are your assignments, which are due Sunday by 11:59 p.m. A couple required readings, of course, your weekly discussion forum. But the big part of your week needs to be working on your first paper, which is writing the first half of a grant proposal. This should be a minimum of 5 pages double spaced, but there is a full assignment description on your My Courses page. Be sure to read through that before you get started. As always, please feel free to reach out to me or visit office hours if you have any questions. I hope you guys have a great week and good luck on your first paper.